Once you've taken off the thick outer crust, this is the Surfboard, which is probably the most important tool. There's a lot of that going on. This is called a fret tool that goes along the edge. There's this thing called the dragon skin, which is also for planing the edges like so. And then we have these sanding screens that work with the foam that work like so. And all in conjunction, and then you use this to take down the stringers when you've sanded foam down. And these are your calipers. Always want to make sure your thicknesses are equal on both sides. So all these tools in conjunction with each other make the basic shaping kit. And you know, I have like a little bit of a routine. I use this one first and then this one, and then you go around, but you kind of get the hang of it. And I think the only way to really get the hang of it is by actually doing it. So that's what we're going to do. So I've done my initial surf forming, and I just want to make sure what I'm trying to do right now is just get a basic evenness, take all of that lumpy stuff out that the clear, and just get everything nice and flat. Make sure everything's looking good. Do that to both sides. And then we'll get into the more sophisticated aspect of the rails and all that. So right now we're doing the general takedown work. Remove it there. Now we're doing our initial rail shaping. Thread tool helps us do that more precisely. The general idea with the rails is, in general, and nothing's always true all the time, the back end, the tail end of the surfboard gets a sharper edge. This part holds the water, and as you move forward toward the front end of the board, somewhere in here it starts to round off. So it's this is where most of your weight is, and it's this transition point from the sharper edge to the smoother, more rounded edge that gives the board its character. And I think in there lies the real skill of the surfboard shaper, is making this like a good connection through here. And it only comes with practice, and again, having that board that you liked really helps, because you can go back and look at it and try to imitate it. And my advice would be less is always more. Like, unless you want to end up with like a potato chip board that's way too thin, just go slowly. Look at what you're doing, look what you're trying to imitate, and just work slowly. And you're gonna find that the harder you try to make it perfect, the thinner your board gets. So at some point you kind of have to let go and realize when something is good enough or as good as it's gonna get, because if your board's too thin, it might not be fun to ride anymore. So we've done a lot of shaping of the rails. We're going in and doing some fine tuning of the tail here with the dragon skin. And a handy little tool to have for working around the nose is this thing. It's called a Dremel. I think it's your basic rotary tool. It makes shaping the stringer a little easier here. Play around with that and bring down the nose. Otherwise, you never. It's hard to sand because of the wood there, of course. And let's flip it over. As you can see, we've taken the edges down, and now we've got a funny little thing here, and that's where this thing comes in handy. Try to smooth this down. And more shaping. This is the general motion, and if you see, we're doing pretty well here. We've got it smooth off. It's not done yet. We've got to do a little bit more fine tuning, and then we'll come in with these sanding screens and do the final stage.
This might be a good time to talk about the one piece of equipment that we've been using that we didn't talk about yet, which is the stands that the board is sitting on. If you're not watching a bootleg copy of this, there's a material list on how to build one of these yourself. It's important that you build a good one that's got good foam covering, because you want to hold the board real tightly. When you're working on the rails, you want to stick it in there. You might want to stick foam in there. You don't want anything that's going to dig into the blank, because that's just more work for yourself. You're going to have to smooth that out. So you got to customize it to yourself. Different people are different heights, obviously, so you don't want to bend over too much.
Thanks. That's a public service announcement. Hold up a minute. Let me plane down the stringer. This is your basic wooden block plane, and once you sand it a bunch, you've got to bring your stringer back down to the foam level. Periodically, you've got to do that. This side, I'm demonstrating on this side because this side's a lot easier because the curve goes like that. Whenever the curve goes like this, and you're working with a flat tool, it starts to become really difficult. And you can get smaller planers. Helps a little, but it's still hard. So now we've switched to the finest screen. I think it's 180, and we're doing the very final stages of the shaping, just very gently. And again, this is something, I can't even really put it into words. You just kind of have to know what you're trying to do by looking at other boards and then recreating that. Like again, you've got this sharp edge that makes this transition to the front of the board. And I guess it's a feeling. The way I think about it is you just want the water to flow smoothly. Rather than getting a degree in hydro engineering, just think of water flowing smoothly. Yeah. I think that's looking done. We'll go back and take some final measurements. But I think this one, in terms of shaping, is complete. This is a kind of a hybrid. This is worth pointing out. We've got a couple of gouges here. Rather than keep going, we're just going to ignore those. You could fill them in with spackling, but that tends to be a different color, and you can do that if you want. If it's a little one, the resin will just fill that in. So that's it for now.